Hey guys, welcome to the first NFL video from Daily Fantasy Winners for this 2016 season. I am with my amazing co-host, Nick Yuskevich, former writer for Bleacher Report, football expert, especially college football. It's sad we don't have college football DFS anymore because it was a lot of fun talking that with you last year. And fantastic golfer, fourth in the Iowa High School State Championship. Sked, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you, Max?
I'm doing great. I just got back from Vegas, had a really great time. So ready for week one, and this is really the most exciting time of the year. And it's kind of a funny time of the year because I think this is my fourth year playing DFS NFL, and every season I see the same pattern. There's all this perception about what is definitely going to happen in week one, and we have no sample to work with, and football is so unpredictable that I feel like a lot of those things we're so sure of get flipped on their head, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we see this all the time when there's so much build up to week one, when we get a lot of people, coming out to play DFS. It's week one, it's the whole build thing. And we see the same thing in other sports too. When you get the biggest prize pools, you get the biggest public perception and anticipation. So there's no doubt about it.
Yeah. So we're going to play a little game. It's going to be true or false about five topics, hot topics that people seem to be pretty sure is going to happen, but we're just going to discuss whether we actually think they're going to happen or there's a chance that the perception is wrong. So I'm going to start with this, Nick. True or false, New Orleans-Oakland is going to be a shootout. Right now, the over-under is 51, which is the highest of any game on the slate. But that in itself is kind of rhetoric because it's just the highest by a fraction of a point. So what do you think?
Right, exactly. It's the highest by a fraction of a point, but perception-wise, from what we've seen in the Twitterverse over the last
the Twitterverse likes to talk.
The Twitterverse, we'll just call it the DFS world, and generally speaking, you would think that this over/under is 70, and so I will say it's I think true in the sense that this game will be 27-24, kind of in that range. False from the thing, it'll be a huge shootout like 37-34. I don't think it's going that far.
Right. Well, let me just stop you right there because I'd actually be curious if even in week one there are any shootouts. I would think teams are rusty. Usually defense is a little ahead of offense at the start of the season. I'd be really curious, but that's something maybe I can look into later, maybe on FantasyLabs or something. But sorry, keep going.
No, that's okay. I mean, personally, I think Pittsburgh and Washington is going to be the biggest shootout of the weekend. Personally,
definitely.
For Oakland, it's like, last year they had a couple shootouts with like Pittsburgh and Baltimore, I remember. But for the most part, Oakland actually didn't get into that many shootouts last year. And you take a look at their offensive skill positions, they're the same guys as last year. I understand why Oakland should be improved. I think it's going to be more on the defensive side of the ball is where they're actually going to be improved, if anything, from Oakland.
Yeah, I agree.
And then as far as New Orleans, it's hard to not ignore this. I'll just ask you right now. As far as opponents for New Orleans' defense, in terms of yards per rush attempt allowed and yards per pass attempt allowed, where do you think New Orleans ranked in each?
I'd say not good. Bottom five. I mean, definitely. I think they were really bad against the run last year, maybe both.
They gave up 4.9 yards per rush attempt, which was dead last in the NFL, barely. And then in terms against the pass, the 31st team is the Cleveland Browns at 7.9 yards per pass attempt. Then you have to go all the way down to 8.4 for the New Orleans Saints and dead last. So New Orleans...
so they're terrible.
They were absolutely atrocious against the pass. They actually don't even have Keenan Lewis anymore as a cornerback, and apparently they got some more younger guys there now in the secondary, I believe. But at the same time, I really see no reason why this New Orleans defense is going to be that much better. So, I know... we had talked a little bit beforehand that we do like a couple of the guys on Oakland, though, as far as giving people some pretty good production.
Yeah, I mean, I think Latavius Murray, I think he's getting a lot of buzz. I think he's obviously going to be a good play, and he's going to get a lot of the workload. But I do think people maybe, because of Murray, overlooking Carr, Crabtree, and Cooper here. I think they could be solid plays. But I actually was just remembering last year how many times, it might have been last year or 2 years ago, there's so many games where everyone was thinking, oh man, Drew Brees at home, he's going to go off. And then he just stunk it up so badly. I don't remember if this was 2 years ago or last year, but it was like I can just see that happening here. I think Oakland's defense is not that bad, and everyone's, they're so high on Coby Fleener.
Yeah.
He hasn't had a great preseason. People are citing Oakland being bad against the tight end. Danny did a study last year about DVP against the tight end, 12 weeks in the season, and it just was not predictive for the last 4 games at all. And it's definitely not going to be predictive from season to season. So I think maybe the New Orleans offense might be a little overrated here, but I think Oakland, especially in the passing game, because if they get down, okay, they're going to pass a lot, or they're going to get up passing a lot. So I think you can be safe and feel safe playing some Oakland people in the passing game.
The one thing I'll just add on there, because I'm glad you mentioned Coby Fleener, we have to remember this is Coby Fleener's first game with the Colts, and when tight ends switch systems, there can be an adjustment period. Obviously, this is a very obvious example. I'm not saying this is the exact same, but we take a look at when Jimmy Graham and so this is a completely different system going from Indianapolis to New Orleans, and so it could Coby Fleener be a top 5, top 10 tight end this year? Of course he could, but at the same time, like you said, for all the buzz he's been getting leading up to this week 1, I think he is a great fade actually in GPP. It's cash play and maybe, but I don't know. Even that, I really don't like that.
I'm glad you mentioned Jimmy Graham, because I think some people who might be new to DFS might not remember. Everyone thought, oh, Jimmy Graham going to the Seahawks. Who else are they going to throw to? Russell Wilson. Oh, my God.
Yep.
And he just stunk it up. And, I think there's a good argument. Like, I asked about Coby Fleener on Twitter earlier this week, and some people said they're talking about Drew Brees in the tight end. He made Jimmy Graham great, speaking of Jimmy Graham. He made Ben Watson actually good last year. So clearly he has some talent at making tight ends productive, but I don't know. It's a little risky here. Anyways, let's move on to the next topic.
Yep.
Indy Detroit. This is the second highest over-under if we're not including Pittsburgh Washington, which isn't on the DraftKings slate because it's a Monday game. Nick, again, do you think Indy Detroit is going to be a shootout?
I do, and what's interesting to me about this is probably I do think it's going to be a shootout, so true to answer that question. And the one thing I find really interesting with this is that the Colts are only 4-point favorites at home, and everyone's talking about how Jim Caldwell's, the coach that's on the hottest seat of all the NFL coaches and might be fired by week 4 or something like that, And so I just find that interesting in the sense that, I know people aren't on the Colts, maybe like they were a couple of years ago because they didn't have the greatest year last year. But, at the same time, I think a lot of people might look at that line and say, Indy's only favored by 4. Well, yeah, Detroit stinks, and so they should, at least beat them by a touchdown, maybe more. So I think there might be some good value here with the Lions' offensive players here coming up.
Well, what's interesting, though, is the line opened at Indy -6, and it moved to Detroit, or Indy -4 towards Detroit and the over. Mm-hmm. Really surprising to me, because that says to me that I don't think public perception here is thinking that Detroit is better than Indy, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe public perception is. You made the point earlier, Calvin Johnson's now gone. How is this offense going to be without him? It's unclear.
Yeah.
But I also want to talk about, because we're saying this earlier, I think Marvin Jones on DraftKings, he's 4,600 right now. He's in a new offense. And people think he's going to get a lot of ownership, like maybe upwards of 20%. Mm-hmm. What do you think of that? Do you think... actually, I'm just not going to ask this rhetorical question. I'm just going to say it. I just want to say that, in new offenses especially, you really just don't know what's going to happen, people on new teams. I like, especially in week 1, when we have that continuity. And that's why I really like someone like D'Angelo Williams in week 1, because this Pittsburgh offense, it's exactly the same. Yep. It's actually down a few guys. We know what Williams can do in this offense. They don't have a new offensive coordinator or anything. He's just going to be a really reliable play in week 1. As for Jones, I just can't. You just can't say that he's going to be that reliable. Golden Tate, on the other hand, we can say, we know what he's been like without Calvin Johnson. I think this is a way more reliable play. And even though he's expensive, he might be worth paying up for it, because he can get 8, 9, 10 catches.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, we can talk about the ownership, because Marvin Jones should have, I don't know exactly where Jones's ownership is going to fall, but on DraftKings, you would think it's certainly going to be high with that price point and all the buzz he's getting. And the second thing I'll just add here is I don't know where this Marvin Jones massive buzz all of a sudden came from exactly, just because, I've talked with several different people, several of my friends, that are into fantasy football. And then I've also talked, or not talked with, but just communicate with people on Twitter saying, where is all this Marvin Jones love coming from? And they're pretty much the only answer I'm realistically getting here is, well, he's the clear number 2 guy and this offense should be passing a lot. Okay, that's nice, but that only gets you so far, I feel like. Is he really that great of a receiver? I think Golden Tate's a better receiver, and even though he is a lot more expensive, he's much more reliable in a week one contest here, or week one outing. And so I'm with you on this with Golden Tate. I think he's a much better play.
Yeah, and he's more expensive. I don't think Marvin Jones necessarily won't have a good game, but I think there's too much of a chance that he doesn't, and possibly the upside isn't even really there. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. Yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on this play. And I'm just going to quickly touch on Indy. I think there's some people fall into 2 categories this season. They're either Andrew Luck believers or they're not believers. Yes. I'm a believer. I think he's going to have a good rebound. I like T.Y. Hilton. I like Dante Moncrief in this game. I think he has a good game.
Yep, I'm with you on that as well. Now that Andre Johnson is no longer there, I no longer have to be on the Andre Johnson train.
Yes. He is the number 2 receiver on Tennessee, though, the worst run franchise in the world. But we can talk about that another time.
Yes.
Okay, move on to topic number 3. The Eagles' defense. Most people perceive that they're going to do well. They face Cleveland and Robert Griffin III. I'm just going to start with this one since you've started the first 2. I think this is smart. I think, RG3 in the third preseason game, I think he got sacked 5 times in not a long period of time. He's turnover prone, he's sack prone, he's mistake prone. I was a huge RG3 fan in his first year in Washington, but I just don't believe that he's going to improve that much. They could run a lot, but I just think the turnovers are going to be there. And Philadelphia has a good special team, so I think this is a safe play. I think the only thing I'd add is I would definitely want to use the kicker on Philadelphia in this game, Caleb Sturgis, because I think this offense is going to be really inefficient. And when you have an inefficient offense and a good defense, that means a lot of kicking. I think he probably is one of the best plays at kicker in week 1.
Okay, I'm definitely going to take a different angle on this one. So I think with Philly, I would say they are a GPP play and not a cash play. I don't think they're safe. And the reason why I say that is because RG3 and with a lot of this I don't remember the last time the Browns have had this much speed and actual wide receivers that are over 5'10" on the outside. This is the first time I've seen this in I don't know how long. So right. I think there's danger on the outside, and there are a lot of threats with this offense. And secondly, I'll also add this: I am a huge believer in Hugh Jackson. And actually, this is the first coach, and I'm saying this as a Steelers fan. This is the first time the Browns have gotten a coach I've really liked, at least in the last probably 10 years. Maybe roughly, give or take. But so I think there's a lot of danger here with this Browns offense. The second thing here is the Eagles are going with Carson Wentz. Now, I think Carson Wentz can be a great NFL quarterback down the road. We have to remember Carson Wentz barely got any preseason action due to his injuries. The second thing I would also say to this is, and I'm bringing a little bit of a college thing here, so bear with me here for a second, but in college football, you have so many different kinds of offenses and schemes and systems, and it's a little bit of a different animal just because, you're dealing with recruiting classes and people who are there for 4 years versus much different, wide variety of lengths in pro football. But where I'm coming at with this is Chip Kelly was just in Philly, and that was a different animal in terms of the schemes he was running. And they have a completely new coaching staff there in Philly right now, and the way they're retooling things. I don't trust anything with the Eagles this year at all whatsoever. whatsoever. And so right now, the way I would look at this is I think the Browns offense will have a big opportunity to be on the field for a long time, because I don't see this Eagles offense doing very much, despite how bad the Browns defense is. I don't think the Eagles offense by comparison is even that much better. So I would say there is a high GPP or a high value end to this with the Eagles defense, in the sense that, yes, RG3 is very turnover prone. He's shown that in preseason. I'm with you on that. Like, they could get 2 pick sixes. But in the terms of how many points they could realistically give up, I think they could actually give up quite a few points as well. So I would say it's more of a GPP play.
Yeah, but I just say the last thing. If we think they're going to be owned a lot in their high variance D, I think that's something they're going to fade. So it depends on what we think about their ownership. But I'm going to do some more research on this. Okay, point number 4, true or false. Julio Jones is the number 1, and I'm not talking about points per dollar, but just projected point scorer on DK. And keep in mind, there's no Pittsburgh game on the DK main slate, so Antonio Brown is in competition here. Thoughts?
Well, the first thing is I want to make sure I'm just saying his status is questionable, so I'm just double checking this. Or that's on DraftKings.
No, he's fine.
Okay, so he's fine. That's old news. Sorry, it was an old injury tag. Sorry. Okay, yeah. I said on a different site that he was fine. Okay, sorry, we're good. Anyways, do I think Julio Jones will be the number 1 wide receiver this week? He has the highest floor of the week. I will go with that, because right now we really don't know who that number 2. The Falcons. See, last year I was one of the people that's always trying to pinpoint, okay, who is going to be the number 2 Falcons wide receiver, because Roddy White, just despite getting all the snaps, was clearly not producing, and there's a void there to be filled. And I do like Justin Hardy a lot at the same time, but at the same time he's young and we don't know what his snap count's going to be. So at the same time, I would just say Julio has the highest floor. And so if you want me to say true or false to will Julio have the most fantasy points for wide receivers in week 1? I mean, if it's versus the field, I'd say false, because that's just odds. But at the same time, I think he has the highest floor and he has a really high ceiling. So I'll just say true to keep this simple.
Yeah, I mean, I will say mostly true. But I will say, I don't know, Tampa Bay, again, this is just going back. Tampa Bay was bad against the pass this year. I'm not sure, or last year, I'm sorry. I'm not sure they're going to be that bad against the pass this year. I don't know if that carries over. So I think perception here is of this matchup is going a little into this, and I just don't know if it's that good. So,
right.
But that being said, I don't know if there's really anyone that I mean, DeAndre Hopkins possibly, Odell Beckham possibly, but none of them have like the a tasty matchup that you want. So.
Yeah, I mean, Julio's ownership will be a decent amount, but at the same time, this is the one thing I've really liked what the Falcons have done with Julio, though, is Julio runs every route in the book, and they use him on so many different routes in the red zone in particular. I mean, they use him from everything from slants, crossing routes, fade routes, to the little shuffle pass they do with Julio running across the middle, as the man in motion. Like, they use him in so many different ways, and he's so good. It's just like his upside's just so crazy. It's really hard to ignore him.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, last point. This is one that I don't think many people are going to say is true, but I'm curious of your thought. Are going to say it's false. Most people think Rob Gronkowski is unuseful in week 1. Do you agree?
I do not agree at all. And the reason why is, and this is something we actually have talked about a good amount last year, I feel like, we were talking about tight ends in garbage time. And so if there was 2 ways I would look at this. Does Gronk have the TD value that he'd have with Tom Brady as opposed to Jimmy Garoppolo? No, probably not. So maybe there's not as much upside, but unusable, I disagree with that completely. I think there's a lot of potential garbage time usage here if the Patriots were to fall in a deficit early. And secondly, when you have newer quarterbacks, I know Jimmy Garoppolo is not a rookie. I think it's his 3rd year, I want to say. I might be wrong on that, but 3rd or 4th year, I think. But in any case, I do believe that Jimmy Garoppolo, despite being in the system for a while, Bill Belichick, a great offensive mind he will make things easier and give him great plays for Gronk, because Gronk and Edelman are the 2 best targets by far and the easiest. And I think we will see Jimmy Garoppolo be looking for Gronk a lot, because the newer starting quarterbacks do like to look for tight ends a lot of the time, because they usually involve safer throws.
Yeah, but here's the thing: are we going to trust Bill Belichick? I mean, I remember last year he basically just had multiple games at the end of the year where he just ran the ball and it seemed like he was just giving up the game, even with Tom Brady. So I'm a little worried here about just having some weird game plan that we can't predict. But I could see that happening. You don't have that fear?
Well, the question was unusable, so I don't think it's unusable.
Right.
I mean, I don't. Do I love Gronk? I mean, no. I think there are better tight end plays out there, but his ownership will probably be pretty darn low. I mean,
2% at most. I think. I mean, maybe that's I don't think he's going to be used. And I think we were talking about this earlier as well. There's so many value plays this week because they release salaries so early. I think you definitely want to mix around these high-priced guys with good upside because if they get overlooked, these are the guys that can have huge games that win you GPP, and if they're not being owned, then they can be awesome for GPPs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, you talk about like, some of the running backs and things like that. Like it's for wide receivers too, but there are so many valuable running backs just because obviously we know this from DFS history. The week one salaries always come out like a month in advance. And so obviously depth charts change, injuries happen, things get mixed up, and there's really cheap players. And so there are going to be guys like, I would think like, a guy like Todd Gurley is a perfect example of somebody that's like, it looks amazing, but at the same time, all 32 teams are playing this week. There are no bye weeks this week. And so I think Gurley's somebody that would not shock me if he was just like a few percent owned at the, when it comes down to it, when things lock on Sunday. Yeah,
that's definitely a possibility. Also, though, Gurley is playing on Monday night, so he will not be available on slate. But on FanDuel, I totally agree. And he's the highest priced one. So, last topic. So we went through the 5 things. The question is what will happen in week 1 that no one will expect? What's your bold call?
My bold call is that this is insanely bold to say. I'm just going to do it anyway. Because I think he is very much overlooked, and he's priced very reasonably well. And that is Matt Forte will have the most fantasy points of all running backs in week 1. And
that's a bold call.
It is, and so there's a few reasons. Number one, he provides great PPR value. Number two, he's at home against a Bengals defense. Now, here's the thing. Most people perceive the Bengals defense as very good. The Bengals actually did give up 4.4 yards per carry last year, which is tied with a few other teams for 23rd, 24th, I believe. And so it's not as good as people think. And the reports are that Matt Forte is going to be used a very high majority of time. He's going to get a lot of snaps and be used in the run and the pass game a lot. And I know the Jets do have a couple very good wide receivers that are good red zone threats, but the Jets obviously still like to predominantly run the football, and I'm sure they'll have some things designed for Forte. And, quite frankly, right now, I think he's, I don't understand why he's a projected 3rd round, pick in standard fantasy leagues. That just makes no sense to me. Yeah. Because he was a 1st round draft pick last year. I don't know why he plummeted to 3, and quite frankly, potentially a more ideal system this year. So anyways, that's I'll still go with Matt Forte. Huge game this Sunday.
I like that, and I will say I think my favorite thing to do in week 1 is take really talented players in perceived mediocre matchups because people are just going to overlook them. Like, I need to look this over more, but basically, if you have a guy that you're just like, whatever, the matchup is not that great. Those are the guys that might go off because things change from year to year, and you just never know when a matchup actually becomes great. So I think that's a smart play. So mine is actually not on the point. It's someone who's in a good matchup, but there's some injury question, and that's Thomas Rawls. So the Seahawks are on our run and pass point share tool, have the highest run point share out of anyone in week 1 by a pretty good margin. And I think people are just getting a little just going overboard with this Kristen Michael buzz. I mean, this is a guy they just cut last year, or maybe they traded the Cowboys for a 7th round pick. They just don't really care about this guy. He had a good preseason with Rawls out, but Rawls seems healthy. All the beat writers are saying he's going week 1. He's going to be the starter week 1. I think in Miami's defense, rush defense last year was really bad, and I don't think they really did anything to get better. Yeah. I think he could have a huge game, and I think people are just going to be off him because of this injury thing. But I think he's someone who could do great in GPPs. DraftKings, he doesn't have that much PPR value, so maybe not as strong of a play, but maybe on FanDuel, especially since he's at the similar price point of D'Angelo Williams, I think he could be quite underused. So I think Rawls is, he's not someone I'm going to play 100% or something, but I'm going to own him, and I think he's a solid play.
One thing also just worth noting, the Seahawks opened up as 7.5-point favorites. They are now 10. So lines opened up a very long time ago, back earlier in maybe the spring. But they're 10.5-point favorites now, which is easily the biggest favorite of. They're easily the biggest favorite of the entire slate. And I'm with you on this one. I do not get why people are concerned about the injury, and doubly do not understand the buzz about Christine Michael. And I was a fan of him when he was at Texas A&M. There's no doubt about that, but I'm not a fan of him stealing Thomas Rawls' touches when it comes to this Sunday, unless if it's like a 44-7 game in the fourth quarter. But so
yeah, definitely. All right, well, that does it for our first strategy video. If you like this, please click the subscribe button below, and look forward to a lot more NFL content coming up this season. And good luck in week 1.
Good luck, guys.